This is Reporter Room with Jessica Della Davies.
Hello, Reporter Room investigators. Come on in, come on in. Today we're talking about Chris Watts and Nichol Kessinger. We have a lot to talk about. We're going to be talking about how Chris Watts and NK, I believe NK fooled Chris Watts into believing she was everything that Shanann was not. So come on in, tell me where you are from. You can tell me what city, what state, what continent, whatever you felt comfortable sharing. My name is Jessica Della Davies. I'm an investigative journalist, and my job is to investigate crimes, crime scenes, and potential suspects, and share with you how to do the same thing. If you haven't subscribed to Reporter Room, please do. Free, and it helps me out a lot. Like, share, leave a comment, and know that everything I'm sharing with you is my opinion. So today we're going to be talking about how Chris Watts and NK fooled him, how NK fooled him into believing that she was everything that Shanann was not. So come on in and tell me where you are from. So Chris Watts was having an affair with Nichol Kessinger. Yeah, they went on this camping trip to the Great Sand Dunes National Park, according to CBS News. Now, this trip took place while Shanann and their daughters, Bella and Cece, were visiting family, both Chris Watts's family and Shanann's family in North Carolina, according to CNN. Now, Watts confessed that it was his first time camping and that he had always wanted to go to the Great Sand Dunes National Park. And I think that, in my opinion, NK was presenting herself as loving all of the things that Chris Watts was into. Remember, she had looked up and Googled Chris Watts and Shanann Watts prior to taking the job at Anadarko. So did she take the job at Anadarko to enter Chris Watts's life? So Chris Watts confessed that this was his first time camping. He says that he always wanted to go to the Great Sand Dunes National Park. He detailed his dates with NK, saying they went to a car museum in Boulder. So she, I love cars, which he enjoyed. They went to drag race at the Bandimere Speedway. So she, really likes drag races. Wow, just like Chris Watts. They also went camping at the Great Sand Dunes National, which is something Chris Watts had always wanted to do and never gotten to do before. So in my opinion, NK was into everything that Chris Watts enjoyed. And so was this a coincidence, or was this related to the fact that she was looking up Chris Watts and Shanann online prior to taking the job at Anadarko? So coincidentally, NK just happened to love everything Chris Watts loved. So NK was hired as a private employee at Anadarko Petroleum in Platteville, Colorado. She worked in safety. She met Watts in the office where they both worked, and he spent time obviously at the oil wells as well. We know he was out at Survey 319, which is where he put Cece and Bella after he did what he did. And I'm not taking anything away from Chris Watts and his behavior. I just want to make that clear. Chris Watts is responsible for what he did. He's exactly where he needs to be. But, has NK managed to get away with anything? So the two of them met in either May or June, depending on what version we're hearing. And their first date was right after. NK described Chris as being kind. This is according to the CBI. Agent Kobach's notes. And she didn't see any red lights in the way that he spoke about his family. This is what the Agent Kobach wrote, noting that NK also remembered Chris telling her that he was separated. And of course, we know that that is not true. We know that NK did not say that Chris was separated. She knew he wasn't separated. We know this from their emails. So, but that's what she told the agent. This is why I do think there should have been some obstruction charges. Let me know if you feel differently. If you think that NK should have been charged with obstruction of justice for deleting all of the text messages and lying to Agent Kobach, put a 1 in the chat. If you think she should not be found guilty of anything, that she was, just freaked out, put a, and innocent of everything, put a 2 in the chat. So, but she said that she thought that Chris was separated. And of course, we know that she had to know he was married to Chris Watts. One, because she was looking them up online. Two, she went to their house. She was inside the house. She could clearly see that Shanann and Bella and Cece lived there. And we also have seen their emails. So Chris was not separated from Shanann, and NK knew this, in my opinion. So NK told police that she thought Chris Watts was cute and that he wasn't wearing a wedding ring. So again, this is suggesting, in my opinion, this is NK trying to, suggest to law enforcement she didn't know that Chris Watts was married. And of course, we know this is not true. She even Googled whether or not a man would marry his mistress. So she was definitely aware that he was married. So the two bonded also over fitness and healthy eating, as well as the cars, according to what she told Agent Kobach. And a lot of people have wondered if NK was trying to be the cool girl. And so I was watching this movie. It's called Gone Girl with Rosamund Pike and Ben Affleck. And it's really, really well done. And there's a character named Amy who's played by Rosamund Parks. And she tries to be everything that she believes that her husband, who she was when she was dating and during their marriage, wanted her to be. She pretended she liked beer. She was, the cool girl. She was wearing a mask and pretending to be everything that he wanted her to be in order to attract him as a partner. And as we get to know the Ben Affleck character, we find out that he is doing something similar. He is also trying to be the cool guy and be everything that she wanted him to be. And they both end up married and unhappy because both of them are wearing masks and not showing their true selves to the other. So he's having an affair with someone else. She's angry, and as she is in the process of staging her own disappearance and abduction. So this kind of made me think about Amy, the character from Gone Girl, and the fact that she did fake an interest to attract her husband. And I wonder if this is something similar. Let me know what you think in the Chris Watts and NK dynamic, that they were, we know Chris Watts had to look up how to tell someone I love you because he didn't really feel it, right? We know he didn't have the feelings like you and I have. And I'm just wondering if Chris Watts had a mask on trying to be everything that he thought NK wanted him to be, which is why he was eating clean, eating healthy. And if NK was also wearing a mask, pretending she was into cars and drag racing and camping, all of the things that would attract Chris Watts, and what they both would have thought when their masks fell down, had they gotten together, had he not been found out, and realized who they actually were married to. Because I think that NK's interest in car shows and going to races and surfing the sand dunes and going camping may have been, this is just my opinion, to attract Chris Watts. And from Chris Watts's perspective, was he pretending to be into eating clean? We know he was eating healthier and working out, but was he really eating clean, or was he just doing this to attract Nichol Kessinger? So in my opinion, they both were wearing masks, trying to be appealing to the other one. So it makes me wonder if anything Chris Watts and NK were actually sharing with each other was authentic or not. So it's a very complicated relationship. And, it goes back to a lot of people felt like NK was very self-serving, self-absorbed, very narcissistic. I'm using it as an adjective. I'm not diagnosing anybody. I'm not a mental health professional. And that, and we know psychopaths, which I believe that Chris Watts is, in my opinion, also are narcissistic. Now, not all narcissists are sociopaths, but for sure, all people who have psychopathy or sociopath are narcissistic. So this would have made for a very complicated relationship, in my opinion. The relationship between narcissism and authenticity is complex. So while authenticity is generally encouraged as a positive trait, a narcissist's authentic self can be destructive and harmful to those around them. And wasn't that the fact that Chris Watts took out his entire family? Isn't that the ultimate in being destructive and harmful to the people around him? So let's take a closer look at this. Narcissists, particularly those with narcissistic personality disorder, tend to present a false or superficial self to the world. And this is why I do wonder if both of these people were wearing masks in an effort to attract the other one. and what would have happened had they actually gotten together and both of them, the mask slips, because it always does. So in this carefully constructed persona underneath all of this would hide a lot of insecurities. And we saw this in NK, where she did feel really insecure, looking up whether a man would marry his mistress. We see a lack of empathy from NK also when she's talking about Shanann. She knows Shanann and the girls are missing, and yet she's talking negatively about Shanann. She knows Shanann and the girls were done away with, and she's blaming Shanann for all of the financial issues that she and Chris Watts had. And of course, we know it takes two to have financial issues. It wasn't all Shanann and it wasn't all Chris Watts. But they also, narcissistic people tend to lack a stable core identity, and their shifting personas are their true self in a sense. So they're constantly adapting and maladapting and exploiting other people for their own needs. And isn't this what we see in this relationship with Chris Watts and NK? Neither one of them are really being authentic, in my opinion, with the other one. They are pretending to be what they think the other person wants them to be. And we see Chris Watts having um, kind of being manipulative with Shanann, right? We see her gaslighting him gaslighting her over the image that he claimed one of the girls took of the doll with the white bag over it. He sent that to Shanann, and Shanann posted it on Facebook saying she doesn't know what to think about this. But we see this, mask slipping with his relationship with Shanann. And we see him manipulating and gaslighting her with that image of that doll covered up with the sheet, claiming that Bella did it. And of course, we know that Chris Watts did do the crimes, and that this was before that. So this was a little precursor or foreshadowing of what he was planning to do to his family. So this genuine empathy and this lack of any type of real empathy and constant need for admiration and control, that does make it really difficult for narcissists to form healthy, authentic relationships. And we see this in the relationship with Chris Watts and Shanann. It was almost a parasitic relationship where he needed her. He needed her until he found a suitable replacement to give him narcissistic supply. As soon as Shanann was not there, she went to North Carolina, and they were reportedly having problems before she went. So as soon as he wasn't getting viewed as the way that he wanted to through Shanann's eyes, he found a replacement for Shanann and planned to dispose of Shanann. And this is really a narcissistic discard is how narcissistic people get rid of people in like the worst way they possibly can. But in this case, this was really diabolical, because he literally didn't just end the relationship, he did away with her and Bella and Cece. So I think he would have, been using love bombing with NK. And if you look at some of the last pictures that we have of Shanann, of her driving around looking absolutely exhausted behind the wheel, remember, Shanann is pregnant. She has Bella and Cece with her in North Carolina, and she was trying to work her job, her business at Thrive. And she had to know that Chris Watts was lying to her the night before she came back from that business trip in Arizona, right? She had to have accepted the fact, in my opinion, that night, that he was having an affair. He did stop using gift cards and paid for that meal at the Lazy Dog with a credit card that Shanann did see. And I believe at this point, Chris Watts no longer cared about keeping his mask in place with Shanann. He had found his narcissistic supply replacement in NK, and he was fully ready and committed to dispose of Shanann. So here's some things to consider of why I believe Chris Watts has some narcissistic tendencies. We saw a lack of empathy and remorse. We saw a striking lack of empathy and remorse when he was eating the pizza, while his pictures of Bella and Cece are sitting there on the table while he's getting interviewed by Agent Coder and Agent Tammy Lee, Graham Coder and Tammy Lee, throughout the investigation. When they called him to get descriptions of the girls, Bella and Cece, he doesn't ask when he gets that phone call about, do they have any updates on his missing daughters. So I think he displayed a lack of feelings or empathy for his family, and he absolutely prioritized his personal desires by engaging in an affair with NK. and eliminating his family as obstacles to his new life with his mistress. Um, so I think he was very deceptive. I think he was very manipulative. He lied repeatedly to law enforcement. He lied in his porch interviews, creating a fake narrative about his family's disappearance. And he also attempted to blame Shanann, right? Agent Graham Coder and Agent Tammy Lee throughout there trying to get him to confess that maybe Shanann had done this. And just like in the Chris Watts case, where there are some people who will never believe, or just in the Brian Kohlberger case, that there are people that will never believe that Brian Kohlberger did it. We see this in the Chris Watts case too, right? People still blaming Shanann, even though law enforcement has told us this was a tactic. They were trying to get him to just admit and try to find out where Shanann and the girls actually were. But he tried to blame Shanann for doing away with Bella and Cece. And this is a, really classic narcissistic tactic of shifting responsibility over to Shanann. And then we see this, constant need for admiration, even in prison. Chris Watts continues to seek admiration and admirers. He reportedly corresponds with women worldwide. He's attempted to re uh, phrase, position himself as, being really biblical and being, a devout Christian. He's, tried to craft kind of a redemption story for himself rather than express genuine remorse for what he did. And with NK, I do think she felt shame, which is why we haven't heard from her. I do think she felt some shame. So she wasn't, shameless. Obviously, she's not, I don't think she's necessarily sociopathic or anything like that, but definitely we definitely saw a lot of self-absorbed behavior in her interviews. Let me know what you think. Do you think that Chris Watts found the new cool girl? That he and NK were both wearing a mask that the other one would have found appealing. I'm just curious what you guys think. I'm looking for ones and twos. There we go. I want to thank our mods too. Thank you, Holly, for modding. Thank you, Enjaz, for gifting a reporter room membership. That is so nice of you. Thank you, Enjaz. And another reporter room membership. If you receive that, either one of those reporter room memberships, please make sure you say thank you to Enjaz. That is so kind and generous of you. Welcome, Abigail Rose, as a brand new reporter room channel member. Welcome to the reporter room family. Your name will be added to the list one day before our next live stream, which right now will be scheduled for Saturday, so it'll be added on Friday. And Michael, welcome to, thank you for modding today. Welcome to this conversation about Chris Watts and NK. And also thank you for the $1.99 super sticker. That is so kind and generous of you. So it looks like we got a lot of ones in the chat. I see one. Okay. Thank you for modding today, Susan. Lots of ones. Nina thinks she was the mastermind, that Chris is not that smart. One from Tammy. Betsy says, I'm friends with the Rusiks. They got NK's phone GPS coordinates. She drove to work at 5:56 a.m. up Highway 25. Her phone pinged 5 to 7 miles behind her in Frederick, arrived at 6:33, according to Frankie and the FBI. She drove to work up Highway 25. So why was she in Frederick? Do they have a theory as to why that is? Why her phone pinged there? Hey, Sabina. You can back up the chat, just so you know. Betsy says he won his defamation lawsuit. Yeah, I saw that. Just fun fact, I got invited to appear on his show on Facebook. I got a message from one of his mods wanting to know if I would like to appear. I didn't answer, but this is why I'm like always skeptical to appear on somebody else's show, especially if it's somebody I don't have, haven't seen all their videos. I just, yeah, I saw that. They had to go over to the UK because he was defaming them. Can you imagine? And this is my understanding too of Dylan and Bethany, is that they also have attorneys. And I expect that we will see some defamation suits. I think blatantly accusing them of doing it. If that continues on, if people keep doing that, I think we're going to see some more lawsuits. Teresa said, I recall her phone pinged outside her typical route to work and was near the house. That was my understanding as well, that it appeared that morning in Fredericks, Colorado, and she didn't, it wasn't on her way to work, but maybe, the family knows something more. And Justice, please like and share. Wicked put a 1. That's right. They were mirroring each other. Yeah, I think so too. I think they both had their masks on and they were both really trying to pretend they were somebody that they weren't. Mariska said, I've worked with people on the spectrum, and that's exactly that back. Oh, I think I'm in a different conversation than what I'm having. Okay. Abigail said, I like Shanann's family, but I think she participated. Shanann? No, she did not. Absolutely not. I'm not sure what you're saying. Shanann participated. Do you want to clarify what that means? Maybe I've misunderstood you. Juju says, "Why is Chris Watts off? Why is Chris Watts the topic of the chat?" I'm just jumping in and trying to get. You can back up the chat if you want to catch up. Yeah, I know who Armed Hair Detective is, Betsy. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to talk about any of the other content creators, but I did get invited on that show. I just prefer to say a former content creator. Yeah, my understanding was that he did get sued by the Ruseks and they won. And then YouTube took his channel down. They still call. Okay, I don't know what this conversation is. Trisha says, so Vinny, I don't know about that. Yeah, he lost his channel. That's my understanding too. Domri said, what did he say to them? It's so disturbing, cold and brutal. He didn't deserve the title of husband or father. And Justice Chris Watts will never be released. No, he's life without the possibility of parole. Wicked says, please like, subscribe, and share. It's free. Thank you so much for that, Wicked. Penny says, oh my gosh, my ex has some of the same behaviors as Chris Watts. Now, I just do want to say, just because somebody has some of the same behaviors doesn't mean that they're narcissistic. To be narcissistic, you have to have multiple things, not just one thing. You know what I mean? Some people could just fall under the category of being self-absorbed. It doesn't mean they're narcissists. I just want to clarify that. But I do feel like in this case, this is just my opinion. I'm not so I'm using it as an adjective. I do believe they both displayed, both NK and Chris Watts, narcissistic traits. Thank you. Nanya says, the $2 in the oil tank and Shanann. Yeah, he did away with Shanann, Bella, and Cece. Betsy said it was so upsetting right after because there were people blaming Shanann and claiming that Chris was actually innocent. Yeah, I saw that, and there's still, there are still people that believe that. I see it on Facebook sometimes. I still see it on there. And Jazz is telling you about our reporter room Facebook group. Susan said, yeah, I removed my comment. Please watch what words you use in here. Yeah, victim blaming is not a good thing. Abigail says, I was a member already. I don't know what happened. I don't know. It just popped up today. So, but thank you for becoming a member. Sometimes it could be YouTube notifies me, which is why I update the list right before I do the next live stream. So I have the most updated, because sometimes I won't get the updates for a day or two. Judge put a 1. We've got more 1s coming in. 1s. All right. Well, that's really interesting. Well, guys, I'm headed over. Kathleen says, you could tell he's guilty by the way he acts, in my opinion. And Penny said, I was terrified of my ex-husband and his behaviors at the end. Some were the same as my ex. Just before I left, he was after someone else, and I was terrified. I'm so sorry that happened to you, Penny, and I'm glad you're safe now. Well, guys, I'm going to leave it there. We're going to be talking about the Lily and Jack case, but I did just want to go through the mask scenario. I thought that would be worth going through. I do think it's interesting that, I was just watching the movie Gone Girl, not, I think it was day before yesterday, and it just got me thinking about Chris Watts and Enjas and the characters. Kind of the takeaway, if you haven't seen it, it's really, really well done. So thank you to our producers and thank you to our channel members. It's really well done. The Rosamund Pike character, Amy, and it kind of is loosely based, in my opinion, on the Scott Peterson case and maybe a little bit on the Sherry Papini case. I don't know when the film was written, but I just thought it was really interesting that both the character played by Ben Affleck and Rosamund Pike, both of these two characters, were so busy trying to pretend they were super cool, they were super interesting, they were super into the same things that the other person was. The Rosamund Pike character, Amy, you said she didn't even like to drink beer, but she drank beer because he liked to drink beer. So they, wake up married to each other a couple of years later. And of course, they're both unhappy with the other one because neither one of them was being authentic into actually who they really were. I also want to do super thanks and coffee gratitude. Thank you so much. This is from the hearing with Brian Kohlberger. And thank you for the gifted channel memberships from that hearing as well. Thank you so much. Well, guys, I'm going to be talking about Lily and Jack next. So please subscribe to Reporter Room. It's free and it helps me out a lot. And I can't get to 50,000 subscribers without your help. And I will see you over at the Lily and Jack live stream, which is going to happen right now.